Golf is an intricate sport that requires an in-depth analysis on the various biomechanical principles that can positively increase maximum sports performance. When researching how an individual's technique can either minimally or drastically improve, it is important to understand the biomechanical principles that can apply to an individual's swing, as they can provide an understanding of how the body moves in specific patterns and how force can be applied to maximize performance. Biomechanists can also adjust an athlete's training technique to prevent acute or chronic injuries that may hinder the athlete's technique. When analysing a golf swing, it is critical to divide the swing into 4 stages to carefully understand the golfer's technique. These 4 stages include the setup, the backswing, the downswing, and the follow-through. The setup allows the golfer to generate static balance and create an anchor of movement for the entire sequence. During the setup, the golfers should correctly position their feet, create and maintain appropriate body posture, correctly place their body in regards to the placement of the ball, and grip the club correctly to allow a fluid motion without losing any control. The biomechanical principle of balance is and should be completely dependent on the golfer's setup. When analysing a golf swing, balance is a key component that should be taken into consideration to determine adjustments that must be made to maximize athletic performance. By creating balance in a golf swing, many variables such as distance and accuracy are immediately enhanced. In biomechanical terms, balance is defined as the ability of a player to control their equilibrium or stability. There are 2 forms of balance that are taken into consideration when analysing biomechanics: static and dynamic. Static balance is the ability to control the body while it is stationary. An example of this is when a golfer establishes themselves in preparation for their swing. Dynamic balance is the ability to control the body during motion. An example of this is a golfer stabilizing themselves during their swing. When comparing an amateur's golf swing to Tiger Woods's, various biomechanical differences involving balance, specifically static balance, can be identified. After analysing the amateur's swing, it is evident that his feet is separated shorter than the shoulder width, which prevents him from developing a core of balance. A loss of balance when completing the swing can result in deviation of the golf ball, due to the point of impact created between the club's head and the ball. Woods, however, has placed his feet shoulder width apart, which allows an anchor of balance to be created, but also creates a wider range of motion. By placing his feet shoulder width apart, the success rate of accurate connection between the club and the ball increases, and his swing becomes more fluid and less inflexible. Another key component of the analysis of a golf swing is how levers are utilized by the golfer. By correctly utilizing these levers, the distance and the accuracy of a golfer's drive can drastically improve. Levers are defined as a rigid-like object that creates momentum around a fixed point known as the fulcrum. This momentum generated then creates movement of the load that the lever is maintaining. There are 3 classes of levers which are determined by the placement of the lever's fulcrum, force arm, and resistance arm. In relation to a golfer's swing, 3rd-class levers are typically the basis analysis. 3rd-class levers are described as when the force arm is situated between the fulcrum and the resistance arm, much similar to a golfer's leading arm, with the deltoid serving as the fulcrum, the combination of the arm and the golf club being the force arm, and the club head serving as the resistance arm. When analysing the amateur's golf swing, it is clear that due to the angle created at the elbow, the levers have not been appropriately utilised to reach maximum performance. This then minimises the influence of the 3rd-class lever and the force that it can generate. In comparison to Rory McIlroy's swing, he clearly maintains a straight leading arm throughout his backswing. By lengthening the arm during the swing, the posterior deltoid and the tricep brachii are then stretched, which allows for a greater range of motion during the backswing. This clearly depicts the contraction and relaxation of muscles, which can result in an explosive yet accurate motion. By creating an angle at the elbow, the amateur is minimizing his range of motion during his backswing, which can reduce the amount of velocity created and exerted onto the golf ball, thus constricting the potential distance that the golf ball can travel. During the downswing of a drive, various biomechanical principles are applicable to analyzing the performance and outcome of the direction and distance of the golf ball. One of these principles is impulse. Impulse is defined by the formula of force multiplied by time. The principle of impulse states that an object will most likely travel in the same direction as the impulse applied to it. During a golf swing, it is essential to maintain steady swing play by utilizing the force and speed of the club to connect the ball with the center of percussion, also known as the sweet spot, to effectively apply force, which can result in an accurate and successful drive. Hitting the ball in the middle of the club face is the ideal point of contact, because the momentum generated from the downswing cannot be lost from the club head moving and vibrating. When this occurs, maximum momentum is transferred into the ball, resulting in optimal distance. In order to connect with the center of percussion effectively, the amateur should align their feet and the sweet spot of the club with the ball during the setup, and maintain that stance to drive the ball in the intended direction and efficiently transfer the momentum of the downswing. The amateur, however, continually moves his feet during the setup prior to the backswing. By moving his feet, he cannot successfully develop static balance due to his constant movement. By continually moving his feet, the amateur is displacing the intended connection of the club and ball that was created during the golfer's setup, which will inevitably result in deviation of the club head and the ball, and shorten the displacement drastically due to a majority of the force generated being lost due to the vibrations of the club. The professional, however, Tiger Woods, does not move his feet in preparation for his swing, which allows him to maintain his static and dynamic balance throughout the duration of his swing. This allows him to connect with the center of percussion and produce an effective drive that is hopefully accurate and goes the correct distance. Force is an integral feature when completing a maximal golf swing, as it is one of the key contributing factors to how the ball deviates after connection is made with the club head. Force is defined as any pushing or pulling activity that tends to alter the state of motion of a body. The body combines a series of movements to generate enough power to perform the backswing, downswing, and follow through of a golf swing. This process is known as force summation, which is the production of the optimally desired amount of force by successfully activating a number of body segments. This principle can be divided into two categories: simultaneous and sequential. Simultaneous force summation occurs when all body parts combine in one motion to create one explosive action. Sequential force summation is more relevant to the analysis of a golf swing, as it involves a sequence of different actions to perform one movement. Sequential force summation relies upon larger parts of the body and muscle groups to generate a great force, then transferring this momentum onto smaller and faster moving body parts. When transferring momentum, each body part should remain stable so the next body part can accelerate around a stable base. In relation to golf, momentum should be efficiently utilized during the downswing, thus transferring an appropriate amount of momentum onto the ball. Throughout the analysis of Tiger's swing, it is evident that he properly creates momentum through his larger body parts, creating more force through an efficient sequence of movements. This is shown in his hip and torso movements, and when he proceeds to extend his range of motion through his arms and shoulders. By specifically creating these actions in this particular order, he was able to use the summation of forces to transfer larger amounts of momentum. In comparison to the amateur's golf swing, a majority of the force generated was from the movement of his arms, which suggests that he did not utilize the amount of energy that could have been potentially generated. The result of this is a decrease in distance that the ball can travel, and evidently the accuracy of the displacement of the ball. This is because the amount of momentum generated did not result in as large of an amount of velocity that could have been generated through the downswing. Torque is an essential factor in a golf swing in maximizing the amount of force generated through the backswing and the downswing. Torque is defined as the turning force that changes the rotation in an object. It is perceived as a golfer's source of effortless power. Torque can be found through the use of the formula force multiplied by distance of the lever to the axis of rotation. In golf, it is essential to understand how to maximize the amount of energy generated through the use of torque, as it can create a recoil effect rather than completely moving the body. By creating motion through the hips, feet, and knees, the amount of resistance that can aid in the creation of momentum is drastically minimized. To obtain a maximum amount of torque, it is important to restrict any leg rotation throughout the swing. This is because it changes the original axis of rotation and restricts the total area covered through the backswing and created by the arms, decreasing most levels of recoil. By analysing Tiger's swing, it is evident that his legs are maintained in the same position throughout the entire process, which allows, as I mentioned previously, a larger distance of rotation. He achieves this by creating an axis of rotation through his hips, which can also create a sustainable anchor of balance. The amateur clearly does not restrict movement through his legs, which is shown through the placement of his knees. Another action that Tiger has taken to increase the amount of movement around the axis is hinging his wrist. In doing this, the angle between the lever and his arm is decreased and carries the shaft of the golf club further away from the ball and closer to his head. The amateur has not done this and has restricted the range that the lever can travel. By minimizing the amount of torque produced through the swing, the amount of speed and velocity developed during the downswing is not completely utilized to the potential amount it can produce. This ultimately results in a lower amount of force being exerted onto the golf ball during connection and can diminish the distance of the golf ball that it can travel. After conducting a complete analysis on how the appropriate utilization of biomechanic principles can improve a swing, it is clear how understanding these principles are essential in maximizing an athlete's sports performance to their fullest potential. It is critical to break down each of these principles and understand what the level of importance that each one has and how they can all work hand in hand in assisting each other for maximum performance.